And now it is my honor to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Robert C. Hilliard. Bob Hilliard earned his Bachelor of Arts in English Literature from St. Edward's in 1980 and his JD from St. Mary's in 1983. He's a founding partner of his very well-known law firm, Hilliard Martinez Gonzalez, and then Hilliard and Shadowin, both in Austin and in Corpus Christi. In 2016 and 17, Bob was lead counsel in a series of cases challenging the United States Border Patrol's policy of using lethal force against persons across the border in Mexico who were allegedly throwing rocks at our agents. He successfully argued Hernandez versus Mesa before the United States Supreme Court, and as a result, the United States Border Patrol has revised its policies for the use of force. Mr. Hilliard was recognized as the Elite Trial Lawyer of the Year by the National Law Journal in 2015 and 16. He's been named a Texas Super Lawyer every year for 15 years. He's been featured in 60 Minutes, ABC World News Tonight, CNN, CNBC, Good Morning America, The Washington Post, The Wall Street Journal, and many other media in the United States and abroad. He's a member of almost every major law association and is a former national co-chair and ethics committee chair of the American Association for Justice. And he has been an active member of our law alumni. He is a double board certified lawyer in both personal injury trial law and civil trial law. Please welcome my friend, our leader, Bob Hilliard.
Thank you, Dean Shepard. Let's just dial it down a little bit. I hear about myself from folks I admire like Dean Shepard, and I shake my head a little bit because I was where you were in 1983, and I promise you, I don't think there were many people who knew me then thought that I would be standing here talking to you now. Mr. Brown is right. St. Mary's lawyers, in my experience, are the lawyers I hire. They're the lawyers that I think, beyond a doubt, hit the ground, ready to try cases. I have 5 of them in my firm now, including my son, Alex, and I'll tell you, I'll put them. So we do national litigation. We go against the best lawyers in the country, and I have watched St. Mary's graduates go against every law school graduate that you can name and win. I've watched their confidence, I've watched their self-assuredness, and I know, because I went through it too, that it's something about this place, something about these folks right here, these professors of yours, the folks that I share the podium with, these honorable men and women to my left. Something about the magic that they give us, right? All right, so I wasn't going to start with that, but Mr. Brown inspired me like he inspired you, so I wanted to tell you, he doesn't know that he's right. I know he's right. Trust me, what he said is not just pumping you up and saying you're going to be fine. I'm telling you, you guys are ready. And I'm excited to find out what's going to happen with you. So, even though everyone on this stage is proud of you, well, let me get this out of the way first. Isa Badetta, you will not get a shout out from me. Let me just say that. She's a friend of the family, relative. Made me swear not to give her a shout out. We're all proud of you, right? We all stand in awe at the future that you're about to embark on, that you're about to enjoy. But tomorrow, we're going on with our lives, and you're going on with your lives. And we weren't there when you lost your first tooth. We weren't there when you crawled into your parents' bed because you had a nightmare. We weren't there when you needed your mom or your dad or your abuela or your abuelo or your tia to help get you through something that happened in your life, a death in the family. In short, and I say this with all due respect, we don't love you. The people that love you and who are staring at you now, welling with tears, welling with pride, probably their hearts bursting, are in this great hall. And we're going to wait for a minute while you guys stand up, find the person, family member, people that mean the most to you, and give them an I love you back shout out. Right now, come on, find them. So it's been a while since I graduated. Remind me, does the drinking start yesterday or today? Or this morning? To those in the stands, let me just say to you, having had 2 children graduate from law school and spent plenty of time with the Kleenex, I know how you feel. I know the pride that you're feeling, and congratulations on helping these men and women to where they are. And your job, no doubt, is not over. It will transition some as they become older adults and professionals, but they will lean on you, they will turn to you, they will need your love for as long as you are around. So thank you. Thank you for giving them to St. Mary's for these 3 short years. So how do I give you some advice, some ways to find the courage that you already have? You know, I can tell you about the time when I was a young lawyer and I decided to take on the Texas Supreme Court when they ruled against me in a case called Havner versus Merrill Dow. And I thought, as a 29-year-old lawyer, it was a good idea to write a brief and call them, Professor Burney knows this, 9 nutty professors. And compare them to one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And I was adamant, I was mad, I was sure that they had made the wrong decision. And Mr. Brown's again right in that sometimes when you decide to stand up and have the courage to take on whoever your Texas Supreme Court is, whenever your moment is, just remember that I'm telling you right now, you can do it. You know, you have the power to do it. So let's say, because of where you are in life today, you get a call from the principal of your kindergarten class. And that principal tells you that you've been invited to come give the commencement address to the graduating kindergartners before they go into 1st grade. And you have to tell them what to expect moving forward. What would you say to them? It's impossible, right? There's no way they'd know what elementary, junior high, high school is. It's impossible. And I've been practicing law twice as long as you've been out of kindergarten. And I thought about, you know, my path was my path because it worked for me. Your path has to be because you know inside yourself and your heart what works for you. But I knew I couldn't just not give you some advice. So perhaps very similar to the advice you might give those young faces had you been invited to give that commencement address. I have 2 points of advice that I will share with you, and then I'll tell you why I feel that way. Number 1, be kind. You can practice law, you can be an advocate, you can stand in front of the meanest federal judges in the country, the best federal judges in the country. You can go to the U.S. Supreme Court, the Texas Supreme Court, and you can still make your case, be an advocate, and be kind. So I'm going to give you an example of that, and this really happened. Dean Shepard told you about Sergio Hernandez, and it was a case that no one thought should be filed. Sergio Hernandez was shot and killed by a Border Patrol agent while Sergio was standing in Mexico with no intent of coming into the United States, playing with his friends before he went home to dinner. There was someone who videotaped it, so we knew what had happened. but he was in Mexico, and the Border Patrol agent was in the United States. I took the case because I have a code when I look at cases, and that code is, that ain't right. So I was told by all my appellate lawyers we're not going to win, and we didn't win. We got kicked out by Judge Briones in El Paso. The Fifth Circuit was happy to kick us out and to scold us on our way out the door. But then the U.S. Supreme Court granted cert. And so I decided, though I'm a trial lawyer with 100 or so trials under my belt, I don't do appellate work. I've done a few, but I decided, I'm going to do this. I was scared. This was the case of that session. This was the case. So I show up at the U.S. Supreme Court after preparing for 6 months, and the line out the door is, I get there like at 6:30, and it's a mile long to just come in and listen. My nephew had come in from Texas and had showed up at 5, and he did not get in the door. So I go in, and I'm the first to argue that morning. So I take the chair, and the justices come in. There's 8 of them because Justice Scalia is, he passed away suddenly and unfortunately. And they bring in the new U.S. Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, to swear him in. And he's standing right next to me, and I have to decide, well, I could tackle this guy as my political comment, and then I wouldn't argue, but I had to weigh that really briefly because I didn't know how I felt about being that close to Mr. Sessions. But then it was my turn, and as I was staring at the court, here's what happened, and here's what stayed with me. Chief Justice Roberts, who I probably disagree with 99% of the time on most of his views, he looked at me to tell me it was my time to go to the podium, but he just didn't look at me. His eyes softened. He caught my eye, and I'm sure he knew I wasn't one of the regulars. They had my background, and he knew I didn't appear regularly there. And he smiled and just gave me just a warm nod. And for me, in that moment of fear and trepidation, and can I perform, can I do this, am I capable of standing in front of the U.S. Supreme Court to make this type of argument, that was everything. And he didn't have to be kind to me. He's the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, but it is who he decided he was going to be, not as a judge or a justice, but as a man, right? And it stuck with me. The argument itself was fine, and I remember a lot of things about that, but as that part fades, what Chief Justice Roberts did, for no other reason than it was his honor and it was his personality. So I'm telling you, find the kindness that I know exists inside of you and be kind. Doesn't mean anything else except that you more freely will be able to share your power. Hear me on that. You will more freely be able to share your power. Second, when you find a wrong, right it. I'm going to tell you one more story. It's about a man named Kua Fong Lee. He's a Hmong refugee put to jail for 8 years when his Toyota ran away from him as he was leaving church. Sudden acceleration. No drugs, no alcohol, pregnant wife in the car. No one believed him. No one believed the Toyota accelerated. People were killed when he hit a car, and he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. A very, very good man. I found out about the case after he had been in prison for 3 years already. The judge that sentenced him gave me a 1-week hearing to prove it was Toyota. And for 5 days, we put on evidence to show it was not Mr. Lee's fault. It was the sudden acceleration of this Toyota. And when his case was tried, the jury didn't believe him. That same judge didn't believe him, and the lawyer that he had at the time, I don't think, believed him because he had broken English. He couldn't communicate. He was afraid. He needed an advocate. He needed a St. Mary's graduate. And I was there for him. And when the judge started reading her opinion, which included these words, "Mr. Lee, a lot of folks let you down, including myself." He really couldn't understand her words in this packed courtroom, and he's staring at me, scared, just with his eyes pleading, what's going on? And I wrote these 3 words on a yellow stickum. I said, "You are free." And that night he went home and stayed with his family. He would still be in jail today, but for that. When you find a wrong, right it. This was all the way in Minnesota, and the district attorney who I fought would imitate me on television with a Texas accent and, make fun of my boots and just like throwing everything she could at it. And all I wanted to do was show that this man didn't belong in jail for something that he didn't do. And I tell you that to tell you this. Please, as you go forward and find your own power, and you will, please remember, if you see a wrong, write it. You have the power of this diploma you're about to be handed. You have the power of this school, this proud school, and the alumni behind you. Okay, so in closing, I'm going to tell you this. One thing that's universal with everyone in this hall, including y'all, is we all want to be seen and heard. We all want to be connected. If you did mock trial or moot court or competed, the first thing you would do after you got done is you would go to someone you know and you'd say, "How did I do?" Right? How did I do? Right after this talk, I'm going to go to the woman I love most in the world, my wife, and I'm going to say those words, "How did I do?" We all want to know how we did. So, if in this marathon you're about to run, that is life, if you get a little bogged down, if you get a little foggy about what you're doing, where you're going, please try to remember this. At the end of your miles and miles to go before you sleep, at the end of that time, when you are done, when it's time for you to rest and when it's time to meet your God, whomever your God may be, and you are looking him or her in the eye, and you say, "How did I do?" You want to hear these 3 words, which were the same 3 words that Justice Sonia Sotomayor said to my son after she swore him in as a lawyer. "You did good." That's all you guys need to know. You guys go out, you do good. You don't worry about the bar right now. You celebrate with these folks in this room. I am proud of you. Class of 2019, way to go. Congratulations.